Hey, what's up? Super dope. Saturday, I guess it's afternoon now. So I wanted to have this thing out to you maybe a little bit sooner. Special extra episode this week. But, anytime I've got people who come on the show who aren't my idiot friends, I have this tendency to screw up sound. So took me a minute to get this one put together for us. But very special episode today. It's part two of a two-part episode featuring my friends Paul, Katie, and Leonard from the NPC podcast. Really fun conversation. We did the first half of the conversation on their pod, basically where I hijacked their feed to rant about the Moro arc to this point in the Dragon Ball Super manga, and then we switched over to our feed to talk about the most two recent chapters 59 and 60. Later on in the conversation, there's a part where I rant about kids spoiling it and how this episode will drop at or around the same time as the chapter or the spoilers or whatever. Sure enough, man. The thing that I ranted about when we recorded this on Sunday or Monday night, I forget, the very same thing that I ranted about happened earlier this week. So be on the lookout for that. If you are a listener of the NPC pod and you're checking this out, welcome. Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time. I hope I didn't talk your ears off too much in that first episode that we did. But thank you to Katie, Paul, and Leonard for letting me commandeer their show, and I thank them for coming on our show and doing the thing here. But chapter 61 is out. I've read it. There's been a lot of discussion about it. And in case you haven't read it, I'm not going to discuss it here. I will say, like I wish more people would say on the internet, I'll give you my opinion without spoiling anything. For whoever thinks that the line Vegeta says in this chapter, about 3/4 of the way through, if anyone thinks that undercuts Vegeta, whatever you want to say, I've seen some people go so far as to say that GT Vegeta is now the better option when held up against Dragon Ball Super Vegeta. It's wrong. It's an edgy hot take. You're wrong. Obviously, it's two very different sets of circumstances, and I could opine on GT Vegeta versus Super Vegeta for days. And you guys know me. I actually kind of like Dragon Ball GT for the most part. I could talk about the differences between those two characters for days. There's a lot of differences. And I would also go so far as to say that Super Vegeta is better, but he's only better because he's got the benefit of 20 to 25 years of hindsight of what the fans loved and didn't love about certain parts of Vegeta. So if you haven't read chapter 61 yet, I suggest you go do it. It's pretty good until, I don't know. I'm not going to say anything else. How about that? Enjoy this conversation with my friends from the NPC pod. Again, if you're checking out the show for the first time, thank you. We hope to keep you around. Stick around. We've got a lot of content we put out usually once or twice a week on normal months, usually 1 or 2 episodes a week. So feel free to subscribe, rate and review Apple Podcasts, all of those places. I'll shut up now. And I'll talk to you soon. Super dope.
Welcome into Dragon Ball Super Dope. My name is Kyle. Thank you for checking this out. So if you've listened to any of the recent episodes, you'll know that I'm going through this stretch in my life where, not only am I confined to my bedroom because of the plague and the work at home stuff and, just America coming to an end, but none of my goddamn friends know how to read comic books either. And that's been a real big source of frustration for me, especially when I make a podcast around the comic book, comic book Dragon Ball Super. So I had to call in a couple of friends from across the country. I had to go all the way to California and call up my friends from the NPC podcast. Let's welcome in my friends Paul, Leonard, and Katie. I guess Paul does this thing where he gives everyone a real annoying moniker when he introduces them on their show. So, Paul, give me an introduction for Leonard.
Leonard? Well, Leonard's easy. Super Pope.
Super Pope. Masterfully done.
Yep, Super Pope.
That's what you came up with?
That's what I came up with. I didn't have a lot of time.
Yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I gotta say,
No, it's fine. Kyle threw this at
that's
me
pretty
before we
crafty
recorded, so
utilization of your
I got
surroundings,
this
though.
thing.
Super dope, super Pope. So Leonard, the Super Pope.
Yeah.
How are you, Leonard?
Oh, I am great now. Like, literally, the fact that I'm called Super Pope, oh, man. Like, I'm going to be saucing on everyone. I'm going to be catching Bulma, Chi-Chi, that one green girl from Dragon Ball Super Broly.
Her name is Chilai.
Chilai, yeah, because she is hot as a chili pepper.
Oh, God.
Good one. So we got Leonard, the Super Pope, and then we also have Katie. Paul, I'll kick it over to you to introduce Katie.
Choose wisely.
Super Soap.
Super Soap!
Oh, my
Does that mean
God.
she's like really clean or what?
I'm in kicking distance.
Look, the Super Pope one was so good. I kind of like. I didn't know where to go from there. Like I hit my ceiling.
You
I went
fell
with-
back on your
with
greatest
a
hits.
worse one for you. I'm sorry.
That's good. Love you
All right,
too.
so Super Soap. Katie, how are you?
Super salty right now.
That kind of makes sense. Thankfully, though, you got the, soap thing to clean off the salt. So that's good, right?
Hey, see?
Hey.
Thank
I want to
you, Kyle.
leave.
Sounds like a whole lot of bath salts.
And then who wants to try to do it?
Ooh, I'll do it.
For Paul with some
I'll do
revenge.
it.
Go for it, Leonard.
All right, and here we are with Paul, a.k.a. Super Boat, because just like the Titanic, it's all downhill from here.
The Titanic didn't go
And you're
downhill, though.
old.
It sunk.
And I'm old. Okay.
All right, I didn't mean to blow it up. I'm sorry.
The same difference.
No, I'll take
Super
it. I'll take it. Super Boat. That's good. I like
Masterfully
it.
done.
Thank you, Leonard.
So, Paul, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm really glad to be on the podcast with you. We just finished recording the NPC podcast where you were our guest, and I thought it was one of the best episodes we've ever had. So I appreciate
Very kind of you to say.
you bringing me on to yours.
So this is what the plan was today for the Super Dope listeners. If you're hearing this today, hooray, hurrah! I've got somebody to talk to me about the main guy. Damn right, I just made that rhyme. Anyway, we did a part 1 of this conversation over on the NPC podcast
Yes, we
feed,
did.
just talking about the moral arc in general, and what's kind of worked for it, what hasn't worked for it, what we liked about it, what we haven't liked about it. But before, I kind of hijacked your feed in order to do that. Tell the audience a little bit more about what your show generally does when I'm not busy hijacking it for Dragon Ball purposes.
Sure, yeah. We are a video game podcast. I sort of say it loosely because we talk mostly about the industry itself. We do spend some time talking about individual games, things that are coming out. Recently, however, we've been on a little bit of a hiatus because, as you said, America is, not doing great.
Coming to an end, you can say it.
Yeah, it's coming to
Last
an
of
end.
Us Part 2.
We're entering sequel mode right now.
Yeah, that's fine with me. But yeah, we talk about the industry. We tackle big topics like sexism in video games, video game unions, violence in video games, things that not a lot of people are talking about. And if they are talking about it, it's usually for a 5 to 10 minute YouTube thing. With us, it's like a 45-minute dedicated thing that we do, and we just get together and love doing it. We've been doing it for 2 years, something like that, a little bit
Yeah,
over.
just about.
Yeah. So yeah, if you guys know how to find podcasts like you found Dragon Ball Super Dope, you can find our podcast too, the
NPC Pod, now available on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, all the places where the podcasts live.
It's true. It's true. Or on Twitter, the NPC Pod. We're there
Very
too.
true. That's how we met in the first
It
place.
is. Yeah. Through now, what was this? The Vic Manimana?
Yeah, that fucking piece of shit.
Vic Manamana.
No, don't sully that song.
Yeah, but you know what, Leonard? I've definitely had that same exact thought several times in my life.
Yes.
So, yeah, Vic Managana. So, obviously, you listen to the show, you know what happened last year. We lost the Facebook page to the Nazis and all that fun stuff, and I still continue to be pretty vocal about it because fuck Nazis.
Yep.
Obviously. And
Yes, sir.
I can't believe we have to say that.
For real. I can't believe we live in a country where I even have to make the discernment between, like, why I even have to say fuck Nazis, but whatever.
Welcome to 2020.
2020 is the goddamn worst. Hindsight is fucking terrible.
Hey, man, we can't let 2020 win because guess what? If we lose in 2020, then 2021.
God damn it, Leonard.
He's yours now. You already said it. You get to keep him now.
I told this really heartwarming story on your show earlier about how Super Dope started, and I'm not going to tell you how that story went, but I definitely allude to my friend Brandon in that story,
Yes.
and it's a very nice thing that I say about Brandon. However, typically I say things to Brandon that go along the lines of, "What the fuck, Brandon?" or "Jesus Christ, Brandon, what do you do? Stop it." And you just had one of those moments, Leonard.
That just means our friendship is growing.
That was a good teaser, I think, to go check out your episode. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a good teaser, yeah.
Exactly.
So now that we've got our friends from the NPC pod introduced, I kind of had to strong arm them. And by them, I mean mostly Leonard. Leonard, is this true or false? In the last 24 hours, you have read all 60 chapters of the Dragon Ball Super manga?
Yes, that is very, very true.
That's intense.
Help me understand what brought you to that kind of decision.
Well, it all started with my first love of anime, which actually, fun fact, my first love of anime wasn't actually Dragon Ball, and I wouldn't even consider it being Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or
I know
any
what it
of those, as people say, it's not anime.
Was it Ranma one half? Because if it is, we're best friends.
I have not heard of that, but now I'm gonna have to watch it.
He's young.
It's about a boy who turns into a girl when he's splashed with cold water. And then he has boobies and stuff. There's lots of boobies.
Oh, so lollies, or traps as they call it.
Oh, good Lord.
Called Ranma, though.
Ah.
Anyway, sorry.
No, it was actually this series called Suzuka, and if my brother is listening to this podcast, which he probably will listen, he is shaking his head. He's probably about to cry because he knows, and he keeps telling me it is a garbage tier anime and no one should ever watch it. But I loved it. It was about this high school girl. I won't go into details, but just look up Suzuka somewhere and try your best to find it. It's about high schoolers, and it's a great way to stay in shape.
Sounds dirty. Wait a minute. Was that a masturbation joke you threw in at the end?
Nope. That was a Family Guy joke.
Oh, that's a great way to stay in shape. Oh, man. All right. So I feel like Katie and Paul, let's get your anime backgrounds. What's your gateway anime drug?
All right. Well, listeners of the NPC podcast might be confused as to why the hell I'm on this show in the first place. And especially not Kent, because Kent would probably run circles around almost everybody here when it comes to Dragon Ball knowledge.
Oh, but you know why Kent's not here.
Yeah, I kind of wanted that too. Anyway.
Oh, what? Does Kent not like me? Tell me Kent don't like me.
Oh, no, it's
not that.
It's probably because he's too busy, and like actually too busy. That guy has a lot of school stuff.
It's because I'm making him work. I'm making him work on a podcast that we're trying to come up with.
Yeah.
It's called the NPP.
Sounds like a knockoff of your own podcast, but whatever. Can we just shift the narrative so that way Kent don't like me? Because I like that one a lot more.
Yeah, sure. We can do that.
Hey, hates you.
Kent fucking hates my guts. It's fine. I wish Kent was here right now. We'd debate Dragon Ball all goddamn day.
You probably would.
I can't believe this beef started so long ago with you two. It's ridiculous.
Yo, Kent, if you're listening, you go get fucked, Kent.
Well, now he knows.
Got him.
So anyway, as I said, they probably don't understand why I'm on the podcast because I have been quite vocal in my aversion to anime. And I know that sounds like a very blanket statement, Kyle. You are looking at me. If your looks could come through a computer screen, they would be stabbing me. And the only reason I say that is because I enjoy a succinct, very cohesive and in and out kind of story. TV, American TV, British TV, that's sort of where my bread and butter is, as well as video games, of course. And when I watch anime, I love the ideas in them. They are powerful and amazing and out of this fucking world creative ideas. And then they spend 17 seasons diving into the minutia of a specific character that won't be in the 18th season. So like it's a frustrating Sisyphean feat to watch anime. However, and Kyle, I know this is also going to anger you.
Uh-oh.
I got into Dragon Ball.
Woo!
Abridged.
Oh.
Someone needs a sense of being for that one.
It was my fault.
It was Katie's fault 100%, but
It was funny.
that is not to discredit or discount the importance that Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super, all of it has created in the anime space, in American storytelling, in Japanese storytelling, in animation. Dragon Ball and its subsidiaries are some of the best anime I've ever seen. The reason I liked Abridged so much is, one, it's funny, and two, it westernizes the story of Gohan and Goku, if that makes any sense.
100% that makes sense.
Okay.
And I think you will be surprised to hear that I did not really take any offense to almost anything that you just said. One thing that I talk about, Jesus Christ, one thing I talk about quite frequently is how a story can be subjected to the medium in which it's being told, and how sometimes if the story has to shift in order to better suit the narrative, or excuse me, to better suit the medium in which the narrative is being told, it makes sense. That said, it kind of speaks to what you're saying about anime. Like, you love the ideas and themes presented in some of them, but then they dive into 20 episodes worth of bullshit. Well, from a production perspective, they have to dive into 20 episodes worth of granular bullshit to be able to build up enough plot in the comic books to be able to,
Yes.
produce more or whatever. And that's, again, just a consequence of the medium itself.
Yes.
But you did say American television. What would you say is your favorite sitcom, I guess, of all time? Because I'm pretty big into sitcoms too.
I don't really like to think in favorites because at least in television,
It's hard to speak in absolutes.
Yeah,
Give me a short list of your favorite ones.
Let's see. I recently watched a Netflix show where this girl gets a superpower and starts killing people in her high school by accident. And I can't.
That shit don't sound funny.
Yonder Ace?
It is funny because she's an awkward teen, and I couldn't tell you the name of the show because the first season ended quite a long time ago. But like,
Do you have any television shows that you've watched like a million times over?
The Office.
well, I mean, the Office is good. I've only watched that twice. But Fringe.
Okay, I've never watched that myself. I had an ex-girlfriend who loved that show, though.
Yeah, Fringe. Anna Torv is one of the best actresses in the world, in my opinion, and she got shit canned by that show, and couldn't work in America after it. And I was really pissed about it, especially because J.J. Abrams was attached to it, and J.J. Abrams is usually really good at keeping his actors and actresses around. Anyway, I'm getting into the weeds, but yeah, Fringe episodes series like that. The Expanse is a really, really good sci-fi show that everyone should check out. It's also a book. Yeah, I'll stop.
All right. So you've got all sorts of like footholds into different respective realms of the nerd world,
Yes.
but none of them specifically tied to anime. But you've got a general respect for Dragon Ball, which is
I have a general respect for a lot of anime.
Demon Slayer.
Demon Slayer is a fantastic show that I sort of stopped watching for some reason, and I gotta get back into that. But my favorite anime of all time, the only one that I will say 100% that I love, is an anime not many people have heard of, but it's called Spice and Wolf. The reason I love it so much is, and I kind of hate to say this, but it's a westernized version of an anime show. There aren't any of those filler episodes. Each episode is leading into the next. And there's not a lot of those like stink lines and giant sweat drops that some animes have. It's purely two characters, and you learn about them.
Interesting. I've never heard of that one. I'll have to check that one out.
It's quick. It's only 2 seasons. The manga goes on for another about 2 seasons worth of content, but it wasn't popular enough to keep going as an anime.
Katie, what's your gateway anime drug?
Oh God. Well, I'm a girl, and in the '90s it was all Sailor Moon. But Dragon Ball and Sailor Moon came on around the same time.
The Sailor Moon theme song was the most banging of them all back then. I just want
Right?
to point that out.
Yeah. But I do have a funny story regarding anime. When I was a kid and I got really into Dragon Ball Z, especially, my dad is the kind of guy who, to this day, I'm like 30 years old and he will still do this. If I show even vague interest in a thing, he's just like, he throws whatever he can related to that thing. And when I was a kid and I showed a lot of interest in Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z, he went out of his way to find me like toys and stuff.
Oh.
And he got me a Dragon Ball Z backpack for school. And it was the coolest shit ever. But when he was checking out, the lady tried to convince him not to get it because he said it was for his daughter. And she's like, well, my boys watch this. She can't be interested in this.
Love that. Love that.
And then from that day on, I was just like, oh, I'm into it.
Now I'm super into
Now
it.
I'm
You started a
hardcore into
fire.
it. Like, now I'm gonna punch every boy I see. But
That's
yeah.
so cool. My dad did the same kind of thing for me, because I don't know. My dad's also a nerd, but my dad is also not that much older than me. I get like my parents had me very young, so my dad was like watching the Cell games on like this is his version of the story anyway. I have no recollection of this, but according to him, when I was like a 2-year-old baby, he and his friends would be hanging out with me in the room and they'd be watching bootlegs of the Cell games. And when it started to be localized and brought over to America and they started to bring those Super Battle collections over through Irwin, he would go to KB Toys down the street and like look for all of those toys all the time, whatever Dragon Ball stuff was out back then. So, but he also kind of had a vested interest because he was a fucking nerd. So your dad just sounds like a really good dad.
Yeah. Well, and he's not really into that. Like he watched when I was getting really into anime at the time, he was like, "Well, I want to watch some too." So he watched a few of the anime movies. Like he saw Perfect Blue and then he was like, "Maybe don't show that one to my daughter."
Yeah.
And then he watched Cowboy Bebop and we watched that one together. And he watched Lupin the Third, and he liked that. And Ghost in the Shell, of course.
Yeah, my dad. I was just about to say my dad watched Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah,
and that was an interesting thing to walk in on him watching Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah,
yeah.
But yeah, no, he was never. He himself didn't really watch Dragon Ball. He couldn't get into it. He was just like, so they just punch each other a lot, and I'm like, yes, it's what I care about. Yeah. I just like.
But there's so much more to it, Dad. Yeah,
yeah.
Your dad sounds like just a nice parent. My dad sounds like he was convenienced by the fact that his kid also liked Dragon Ball.
Well, my dad was also like into Doctor Who really hardcore, so he understood my fixations.
Right. That's good. That's good.
Oh, all right. So your dad is a nerd then. Okay.
Just not an anime nerd.
No, but it's the same. He understands the mentality and the thought process of
it.
Yeah.
Word.
My father was a man of few words. But one thing for sure, he didn't really like anime that much, but he did like Marvel and DC a lot. To give a little background on that so I can just make it short, sweet, and simple. He didn't like anime because he said, and I quote, "The way they move their mouths and faces has no emotion whatsoever." And when I tell you as a young kid watching Yu-Gi-Oh!, I was hurt. Like, I came from literally a family that said, and quote, "You're not allowed to watch Dragon Ball because it's a little too violent."
Hey, again, you just sound like you got parents that care, man.
Yeah,
Big deal.
Yeah, I mean, granted, yes, they did care. And one thing that they definitely understood was definitely that they understood that no matter what age you are, you can always find comfort in either, whether it's a kid cartoon show or an anime show, anything like that, you'll find comfort in it and get sucked into it.
Yeah, I would definitely say that I've fallen victim of that exact mentality that your parents spoke of, because I'm a 31-year-old male who just has a podcast pretty much exclusively dedicated to the subject of Dragon Ball. And if that ain't fucked up and what your parents basically warned about, I don't know what is.
Especially hentai.
Yeah, it's not really my thing.
Cool.
Not my
Cool,
thing
cool,
either.
cool, 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 cool. So, now that I've got a little bit of background, or I keep saying me, but it's because I'm talking to you guys. But now that the audience has a little bit of background on who you guys are, what your show is, go check out part 1 of the conversation there, where we talk about the Moro arc writ large, up until these last couple of chapters. So, if you haven't heard my conversation with Aunt Gramulia from CBR from a few days back, go listen to it. If you did listen to it, you will know I spent most of the last week just trying to find somebody to talk to about these most recent manga chapters. And when I say somebody, I mean, like, I talked to the regular Super Dope fan, Brandon, Dan, Carlton definitely don't read, and then I expanded the scope a little bit. I talked to my real content creator Dragon Ball fans that have Dragon Ball friends that have a sizable audience on YouTube that I managed to make inroads with. I tried to pull favors, and they said, nah, I don't read that manga. It's fine.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
People who genuinely make content, not once in a while. I mean, people whose entire YouTube channels are basically staked on Dragon Ball as a property and what they cover. Even they aren't keeping up with these mangas lately. I don't get it, man. I don't get it.
Kyle, clearly you're not a Fairweather fan. That's what's happening.
Dude, I wish I could give you guys a fucking video tour of my room right now, but it wouldn't be convenient with the laptop stuff. If you knew how much Dragon Ball stuff is around me right now, you probably wouldn't talk to me anymore. You'd think that there is something wrong with me.
I've got a decent
Straight
amount
up.
now too.
Yeah,
It's
you're
pretty
getting
gross.
there.
Yeah, no, you can still see a fair amount in the video shot that we have here. Even I'm looking at way more Dragon Ball within 2 feet of me. Either way, I really like Dragon Ball, and it kind of was disheartening to know that all of these hardcore Dragon Ball fans aren't really reading it month to month or keeping up. But one thing that has frustrated me about the chapters month to month, we are recording this on the 16th of June, so you all know that the new chapters come out on the 20th, usually somewhere around the 18th or the 19th. We will have scans usually come out on Twitter of a few panels from the newest chapter that'll drop on the 20th. And basically just off of those few panels, it's enough for people to piece together what the entire chapter is going to be. And it sort of ruins it when your first interpretation or your first opportunity to absorb the material comes through somebody else's scope or interpretation of it. And that's basically a really classy way to say, these motherfuckers keep spoiling shit for me and it's pissing me off.
Yeah.
It just makes me not motivated to keep up. You know what I mean? It's frustrating.
Yeah, us in the video game community have to deal with that on a constant basis.
Data miners.
May I remind you of Last of Us Part 2?
People who just, like the Last of Us thing that just happened, that, someone found a specific detail about the story that I don't even know because I care not to know. And then exploded it on Twitter, and people then turned around and said, well, now I'm not buying the game. So, yeah. Twitter is so frustrating. Twitter is a evil double-edged sword.
So in the conversation with Ant the other day, we alluded to something about, basically the conversation was about Dragon Ball AF, which in case you guys don't know, it's like a fan Dragon Ball manga that happens after Dragon Ball GT and the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yes.
It was a very, very interesting conversation. But the roots from in which that series took place basically just came from what I'll call early versions of YouTubers. Even though YouTube wasn't a thing, people weren't making videos, people were still trying to make content based off of Dragon Ball. And the way they did it back then was they made fan art, uploaded it to whatever respective internet websites, and it would get picked up in search engines. People would see it and say, what the hell is Dragon Ball AF? And the conversation perpetuated from there to the point where Toible, aka Toyotaro, the guy who's now working with Toriyama on the Dragon Ball Super manga, in 2005, there's two different starting points for it. I believe it's 2005, Toible starts like this proper fan comic of Dragon Ball. The fact that it starts from early content creation based off of, somebody's want to fill your desire for Dragon Ball content. Back then it was just images. Now it's, coming by the way of YouTube stuff. We talked a little bit about that with the conversation with Ant. What kind of undercuts the manga each month is because everybody wants to be that first person to make that content now, instead of, fan drawings or whatever, it's spoiler reviews of the latest manga chapter and to be the first one to post it.
Yeah.
It's so infuriating. Like, I don't think they know what they're doing, because I got this one kid I follow on Twitter. I'll not say his name because I think he's a really nice kid. But he's the kid who routinely ruins it for me every fucking month. I know he's like a 20-year-old kid. I know he means well. And was working hard to get his YouTube feet under him and build something for him. And he fucking should. Yeah, good for him. But at the same time, like, understand that you don't need to be first to the punch on everything. And sometimes when you are, it makes other people want to kick you in the face.
The YouTube algorithm, though, has just kind of set every content creator up for that. Exactly. Because it doesn't necessarily need to be good. It just needs to be first.
Yeah.
So, and it's not even about quality anymore or quantity. It's about who's first.
Yeah.
And the YouTube algorithm values the earlier videos over the latest ones. And this is actually a conversation that I've had a few times within, my own community, the Destiny community, watching data miners. Every single time a new season's coming out, there's hundreds of videos get flooded about oh, this thing's gonna happen with this character and these guns are coming out, and it just becomes kind of a game of okay, what's gonna be a spoiler and what's not. But YouTube always, no matter how much I curate my feed, I will always inevitably find out something spoiler related that I didn't want to know because someone within that same community uploaded a video and put it in their title.
And in all honesty, knowing that you guys are primarily a video game podcast, this ties in perfectly to how I feel about Kakarot. Like, we talked about it off mic a little bit. I basically said to you that I feel like that game is very much a chore and just a grind to get ready for whatever the next level is. But one of my other frustrations with that game was I didn't even get to fucking experience the parts that I experienced by myself first. I had to experience them through every kid who got an advanced press copy of it 3 weeks before it hit the stores, and them tweeting out what the storyline was with screenshots and pieces of the funny little dialogue that ties together all these weird back characters and side stories. The reasons for which you would purchase the game, they were blown up before the game even hit stores because everybody was just so about being the first to post. It sucks.
No, I mean, it's a habit that sort of all nerd cultures sort of fall into, where not only do you have to be first, but you have to know. You have to get every little bit of information that you can every second of every day for that one thing that's coming out. Last of Us dealt with it. Cyberpunk 2077 is dealing with it right now, where they are they have put the clamp down on any leaks or spoilers, and still things squeeze out. And yeah, anime, television, movies, it all comes down to this mentality where we want it now. And so we'll take any little bit of information that we can get just to have just a little taste. Give me
it's
that.
like a hyperfixation, instant gratification culture within the nerd community that, for me, when it comes to Dragon Ball, the reason, I said previously in part one, I haven't been keeping up with a lot of the Dragon Ball stuff lately because, A, money, and B, usually just find out stuff on Twitter anyway, even though I'm
Right.
not really on Dragon Ball Twitter that much, but I happen to follow a couple of people who are. So then Twitter decides that I need to see this post. And then it's like, oh, well, I didn't know that happened, but that's neat.
Yeah. I mean,
Cool.
I follow.
Or is going to happen.
I follow, shameless plug here. I follow Super Dope on Twitter, and you guys, you don't do that. You don't post shit about the upcoming whatever and whatever.
I try not to
Yeah.
because, in all seriousness, I think there were times where we treaded in that territory, and it mostly revolved around when the episodes were still on week to week.
Right.
Because Saturday night into Sunday morning was a fucking event each week. I said it in part one of our conversation. Dragon Ball Super is and I've said it before on the show here, but Dragon Ball Super is a very unique stretch of time to be a Dragon Ball fan because for the first time, the cartoon comes before the comic book, and you don't know what's going to happen week to week. You get a brand new installment of this story live on television. Not live, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
but a new installment each week on television, without fail. You don't have the comic spoiling it for you, 9, 12, 18 months in advance. This is genuinely your first time experiencing this story. So on Saturday nights, it was an event, and I would hop on Twitter and I would grab some screenshots sometimes, and I'd be like, yo, check out this crazy elimination that just happened in the Tournament of Power. But I did quickly come to learn that it's just not worth, because I had those moments where I spoiled it for people and they were genuinely upset, and then I was a little bit more mindful of it. But I don't know. I think me having other things spoiled for me really was the impetus to not be that guy. Like,
Right.
I have a life. I work on like literally 8 different podcasts, I think, right now. And then I'm still finishing out a day job through the beginning of August right now. So I work a lot. I don't have the time to be that guy.
Yeah.
But I still like to open up Twitter and scroll through there every once in a while. And I'll open up the Super Dope Twitter. If not my own personal one, I'll open up the Super Dope one, whatever. I'd like to be able to open it without having. I don't want to be. I don't want to have to face consequences for having a fucking busy schedule.
Yeah.
And that seems to be what it is sometimes.
Yeah. It's sad.
Yeah, speaking from a Destiny perspective, there are times when I have to go on social media breaks for a few days during reveals or leading up to reveals just because it's like someone is going to tag me in something that I don't want to see.
Yeah. and that's the thing that I kind of don't understand with this mentality that nerd culture has. Like, I like the, hey, in 2 days you're gonna get a trailer, or in 2 days you're gonna get some information, and then waiting that 2 days being like, I wonder what they're gonna do, and then tuning in to that reveal. PlayStation just had their big PlayStation 5 reveal, and I waited for that at 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. I tuned in to their fucking Twitch channel and I watched the whole thing. And it was like a TV show of the days of yore where you had to schedule your TV around your life. So
You're so old.
I'm so old. But I mean, it's more entertaining to me for them, the creators, to release it in the time that they want to release it and in the way that they want to release it, and not relying on at Joe Schmo 345 on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook.
Anyway, that was actually supposed to just be a segue primarily for me to bitch about kids on Twitter just hijacking the content I enjoy for their own content repurposing purposes. That was a really tricky sentence.
Well, we at the NPC podcast are notorious for destroying segues.
Yep.
So
We don't believe in them.
The NPC effect.
Well, here's the thing. I think that we just took a segue and made it a very viable part of the podcast discussion for good reason. Chapter 60 is the most recent chapter that came out on May 20th. So I've been trying to get my friends to do a chapter review of this since May 20th. That would mean chapter 59 on April 20th, 420, was the last one that we did. I think it was me and Brandon did it together. It was a very action-heavy chapter, just Goku fighting Moro primarily. And even that conversation, even though I'm pretty sure we did a pod on it probably wasn't super long. So this segue, in a lot of ways, again, another tricky sentence this is, that segue in a lot of ways has been helpful.
Good. I'm glad we can help you out there, Kyle.
We're so good
That's
at that.
cool. So quick chapter 59 recap. I'm sort of borrowing the format from Spider-Man Sundays, now available on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify.
There you go.
If you like Power Rangers or Spider-Man, Japanese stuff, maybe you like Japanese Spider-Man, go check it out.
You got to plug it in
Real
anywhere,
fun.
man. Plug it in whenever you want.
I basically plug myself constantly. Sounded worse than I meant it.
That's hot.
Chapter 59 recap. Goku arrives back on Earth after training with Miras in the bootleg room of Spirit and Time, and he quickly ascends to Ultra Instinct Omen, or Sign, I believe is what they're calling it in the Viz translation. A lot of the fan translations, the fast translations, have, I believe, kept going with Omen, but the Viz translations, I believe, have since shifted to Sign. There's a little bit of back and forth about basically how this form is able to stand up to Moro, despite the fact that Moro was using, this new magical technique sort of ability to fight. And a lot of it revolves around the agility of the form, the speed of the form. And because he's so fast, Moro can't use like his customary or primary battle trait of absorbing his opponent's energy, because Goku's just too fast to have his energy be absorbed. Chapter 59 was a little, I would say, I guess, frustrating to me. And we talked about it a little bit in in the first part of our conversation on the NPC Pods feed. Go check it out. But one thing that upset me about this arc to this point is they've sort of teased quite a bit that Vegeta is going to be the guy to get the final win. And in chapter 59, they take this really sudden, abrupt turn. That made me not want to read it anymore. They go and take these long, they go like out of their way to tease it in a few different ways, where Vegeta kind of tries to basically, what's the right word?
Strategize?
No, not strategize. It's repay, make penance, atone. That's the word.
Oh.
They go through this arc where Vegeta tries to atone for his previous actions on planet Namek for having killed as many people as he did
So
in
many.
the Frieza saga. So he's the first guy to step up to Moro, and he's a big part of that battle on new planet Namek. And him having gone off to planet Yardrek to learn supposedly a new technique or a new way to fight or whatever. It's, Goku's going to do the same old thing with Space Cop over here, and Vegeta's going to learn a new technique. The posturing of it leads you to believe that Vegeta's finally going to get the win. It's very reminiscent of when Frieza comes back in the Fakatsu no F Revival of F series, when Vegeta's got Frieza on the ropes, and then all of a sudden, nope, just kidding.
Yep.
The world explodes, and Whis has to rewind things. I don't know why they continue to play with my emotions as a Vegeta fan. We did a thing on your show earlier where we put ourselves in specific camps. I won't say which camp I fell into, but Leonard, you said that you were in Camp Vegeta, right?
Yes, indeed.
And having been somebody who's read 60 chapters of the manga in the last 24 hours, how are you feeling about Vegeta's capability stepping up to Moro? Because basically Goku goes at him with UI Omen, gets his ass whooped, because what do you know? Moro has a little bit more power on top and powers up to even more godly power, and Vegeta shows up to save the day. So how do you feel about Vegeta's odds coming in to finally be the guy to save the day for Goku?
The word of the day is depression, because clearly I have it due to the writing of the Dragon Ball manga. I will not lie. From reading this beginning of the arc where you actually meet Moro on New Namek, or Double N, I'm going to call it that, Double N.
Well put.
But being on Double N and seeing that Vegeta actually became more honorable, in my opinion, I was like, wow, this is actually what, as you and I talked outside the podcast, that as we say that, how totally not Mark would say, it's very good character development for Vegeta, because it's showing that he's turning that new leaf to become bigger than what he is itself, which we all have agreed, and we said in the last episode. He has some BDE, which, if you don't know what that means, listen to the last episode. Then
Yeah,
come
go check
back.
out part 1 of this conversation. Know what we mean by BDE. I guarantee you, it doesn't mean what you think it means when I say BDE.
Totally.
Bad diva environments.
That's not what it means either. Go check it out. Katie, I'm not going to reveal which camp you eventually fell into in terms of the Goku or Vegeta camp, but how are you feeling about the idea that Vegeta could net his first win against the major villain?
I think it would have elevated the character who I fell in with in a way that we haven't seen before.
Fell in with meaning what? Is he somebody who was a big reason for you getting
It's
into
Goku.
Dragon Ball? Yo,
Like, I love Goku, but like, damn, he gets the W all the time. And for once, just once, I need him to be knocked down in a way that doesn't mean someone else has to die before he realizes maybe he screwed up. Like, I need him to get knocked down a peg, to realize he needs to take a step back and allow others to do what they can and what they are capable of. And I think that would make him a strong, I don't want to say better because I think he's a great character, but I think it would make him a stronger character just as a whole altogether. And knowing they're probably not going to do that no matter what happens ever, is just so frustrating, because it continues to put him in that spot that, you know, everyone lumps him into, where, oh, he's so boring. Oh, he's too good. Oh, he's this. And they overlook the things that make him a great character because the creators are too afraid to add dynamic to him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm gonna sort of play off that because I just sort of realized something. Vegeta. There's a concept in storytelling called warfing. It's kind of a newish concept, but it's called warfing. And what that means is that on Star Trek, if you wanted to say that this guy was a badass, Worf would step up and be knocked out by this guy. That's how you would know that he was a badass, because even Worf got knocked out. And Vegeta sort of falls into that camp, sadly. Because Worf never got a win unless it was dealing with the Klingons. Unless the episode was dealing with the Klingons, Worf never really got a win. He was a punching bag for a lot of bad guys. And Vegeta is sort of that. He is sort of the punching bag so that Goku can run in and save the day. Save the galaxy, save the world, save the universe at some points.
I gotta be honest, I've never heard the term warfing before, but basically the second you said it, I almost knew what it was gonna be.
Right?
And I'm not even really a big Star Trek guy
Neither am I.
either.
Yeah, it's
I am, and I'm mad. I'm mad because you're not wrong.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting concept. If you want to quickly get across the idea that a guy is badass, you pick a bigger badass and have him punch him. That's it.
Yeah. So I think, for the listeners who were keeping up with Super Dragon Ball Heroes, this whole universal whatever the fuck arc where all of these different villains get together. I don't even know what's going on in Dragon Ball Heroes right now. That is such a mess. But
Oh god.
Jiren shows up at a certain point to help fight the baddies, and when Jiren gets punched in the stomach and he's kind of useless for a little bit, That's the equivalent of warping on the Dragon Ball level, for sure.
Yeah.
So my issue with the last couple of chapters, basically, with a really action-heavy chapter for 59, almost entirely action. The one thing that they did was set up two things with Miris, I think. One is that he is the one to tell the audience and Whis that Goku has not perfected Ultra Instinct, and that this battle could potentially end badly for him. And then the second one is he poses the question to Whis. It's like this really weird panel, but it's super, super cool. Beerus is like waking up. I don't know. He looks kind of sleepy, but he asks Miris, "Hey, you know how to cook any food? You spent a lot of time on Earth or in the galaxy or whatever." He's like, "Dude, why are you thinking about food? Our friends are about to die on this planet out there." And Whis and Beerus kind of stop and say to the god in training or whatever, "You can't get caught up in like the mortal balance of this part of it. Like galaxies, planets, they come and go every day. Like it's just the natural balance of things, and we really can't concern ourselves all that much with it." And it just speaks to a problem that Dragon Ball Super has had since the beginning in an effort to kind of repower scale and reset things a little bit. At the beginning of Super, they bring in the gods of destruction and the angels over them.
Yeah.
And the question's always been, because they've always preached this supposed impartiality, they've always preached it, but they've never really abided by it. Like, they bailed the heroes out of several sticky situations. This is like the first time where they kind of, at least seemingly convincingly, feign indifference. And I don't know if it's going to ultimately play into the final outcome of the story. If I had to guess, maybe Miris being the guy who can't, play into mortal affairs, and he's the guy in training. My hope is that he'll say fuck it and descend to Earth or whatever to save Vegeta and Goku. I could see that maybe playing out for his story. I honestly thought his story was kind of done already, but they keep making conscious efforts to tie him back in the last couple of chapters. So I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he'll play into the final outcome. Regardless of Maris, though, what upsets me is they've set up Vegeta to be this guy now, and then even before he shows up, they basically give you the out that Goku doesn't have this thing perfected, and Vegeta's going to save him, and then Goku's going to save Vegeta, and then we'll all go home. I don't know. I think people aren't ready for that level of betrayal, because when we first had this happen to us with Fakatsu no F, it came by way, again, it gets back to the earlier part of our conversation about the medium. In this case, it was the medium of a movie introducing the story or the idea of Vegeta getting his revenge finally against Frieza. And we had to watch it for 80 minutes. And we experienced the whole thing front to back. We knew if Vegeta got his revenge or not. In this case, we're consuming the story for the first time through a comic. We have to wait month to month for a chapter. In my brain, for the last 3 full months, Vegeta's been postured to get the win on this one. So when they have Vegeta descend on the battlefield, and before he even gets to exchange a blow with anybody, he is automatically undercut by this little off in the distance scene between the two gods, talking about, "Oh, Goku didn't perfect it. I hope he does eventually. Otherwise, they'll never win." Like, it just 3 months of me hoping that Vegeta was going to get the win right down the drain. It's just, the medium can be a bitch sometimes. Anyway, I'm sorry that I just hijacked the conversation.
No,
No,
please.
you're good. Well, and it kind of leads to more of my frustration, just again not being as caught up as I'd like to be. It's because I have done this song and dance X amount of times with the same series, and as much as I love it, as much as I love Goku, it's just the same thing every time, and I'm bored. Like there are ideas there that I really like, there are concepts there I really like, there are characters there that I really like, there are things that I really like, But in the end, I know how the story is going to be resolved, and it's resolved the exact same way every single time. And it just gets to a point where it's like, okay, I get it. I do. Goku is the face of this franchise, and you don't want to betray his fans, but like, for God's sake, if the fans are so delicate that they can't handle him not having a win every single time, like, are they fans?
Right.
Are you
Bunch
guys
of
writing something
snowflakes.
interesting? Well, I mean, Captain America loses how many times, and he's still going
kicking
strong.
it. Yep.
Like Iron Man, like the legendary comics, like characters and such. Wolverine, even well, he's a giant piece of shit sometimes, but like. They lose now and again, and they're still going strong, and they still have like compelling story arcs, and it just seems to be a theme with a lot of anime and manga in general, where they have a hard time, especially the older stuff. Like newer stuff, it's a lot better, but like the older stuff, they had a really hard time letting the main characters lose, and if they lost, it was just for that one episode. Don't worry, they'll win the next one, or like don't worry, they'll be right back, or don't worry, there's a totally different out, and it's like. This goes back to my frustration with Original Z, where they spent the entire series building up Gohan, only to, oops, he dropped the earring. Silly Gohan. And that's when I tapped the fuck out of the Buu saga. I was like, nope, I'm done. I can't. Like, you killed off Vegeta, and now he's back, I guess. Cool. You played with me there. And then Gohan drops the earring. I'm out. I can't.
Dude, you literally, I watched an episode last week, Gohan, where you caught like 68 bullets out of a Tommy gun.
Right? And you drop an
And then
earring.
you can't catch an earring lobbed at you at very slow speed.
And it comes down to my frustrations with like how a lot of companies, especially in Japan, approach those kind of things, where it's like of a writer, and this is we could have a whole conversation about manga and like everything from Inuyasha to Dragon Ball having this problem.
We do have an episode called like Bandai's Money from a couple of years ago where we talk exactly about what you're alluding to,
Yeah.
just the culture behind how they keep these properties around as long as possible and how they're specifically designed to extract as much money from them as possible in terms of merchandising and licensing.
Yeah, and I mean, it even goes beyond that because it's like the story, and I don't know how true it is, I'll have to double check, but the story that sticks with me is how often Toriyama wanted to move away from Goku and wanted to kind of like put Gohan in his place and continue the story from there, and how often there was so much pushback from that because Goku's the main character, Goku's the one that sells, Goku, and how it just made him angry and embittered about it more than anything. And it frustrates me to no end because I fucking love Gohan. I have always loved him, and like I don't lament what happened to him as far as like not being strong. I lament that they undergot him to the point where it's like, oh yeah, no, he's insanely strong. He's on par with like god tier level strength, without even having to be a god tier level. But he's just not into it. It's like, okay.
He just wants to go read books.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I respect
New
that.
Harry Potter came out.
Your characterization you gave him before had a nice balance between the two, and for some reason you can't seem to figure that one out anymore, and that's cool. Sure.
Yeah, that's definitely a point of contention in the story of Dragon Ball lore. The did Toriyama mean to phase Goku out and phase Gohan in thing?
Yeah.
A lot of evidence points to absolutely yes, he did. But in their effort to like rewrite that part of things, they're like, oh nah, we always knew it was the Goku show. What are you talking about? Like, dude, Goku was dead for 60 fucking episodes. What do you mean it was always the Goku show?
How many times did Toriyama kill him off and go, nope, definitely this time he's for sure dead? And then it's like, nope, he's definitely not though.
I forget who it was. I want to say maybe it was Mr. Fusion, one of the best YouTubers who's also not keeping up with the manga. I talked to him earlier this week, but when I talked with him a couple of months ago on the pod, he talked about Dragon Ball being the story of Goku. Dragon Ball Z, even from the beginning in a lot of ways, is just the story of Gohan.
Yeah.
Even though it doesn't feel like that until midway through the Cell Saga, when Goku actively shifts out of that role and says, hey, you're the guy now, and then he has, to sacrifice himself to save everybody from Cell exploding. and then Gohan becomes the guy, and then the 7-year time jump, and then we see him in high school. Like, you could make the argument that, and even on Namek, like on Namek, Goku spends so much motherfucking time in that healing chamber. You could say the Namek saga primarily, the protagonists of it are Krillin, Gohan, and Bulma, and Vegeta is the guy who's kind of on the periffs, who can kind of swing either
Yeah, the
way.
anti-hero.
Yeah.
Anyway, you could argue that it's a story of Gohan all day. I hate that they try to walk that back and be like, no, it's always been the Goku show for real.
Yeah, Gohan never really liked fighting, even though we showed many movies and segments and episodes where that wasn't the case at all. Nope. Never liked it. Hated it every time.
Definitely not the case. It's just, I don't know. It's frustrating for them to have so shamelessly gone the other way. In terms of Dragon Ball Super, I mean, that's the joke, is that it's the Goku and Vegeta show.
Yeah.
So, at least this arc in the early going of the Moro arc, as we talked about on part 1 here, was they do a better utilization, or like expanded utilization of the greater cast. Like, you get to see Tien and Yamcha and Chaozu and Krillin and all these smaller characters have some moments, but they also do a good job utilizing the world lore, bringing in the Grand Supreme Kai, and bringing in other parts of the Dragon Ball story that you may not have thought about in a while, or may not have thought would ever tie in to a future arc. So they're hitting a lot of things, at least in the beginning part of this arc, to kind of draw you in and get you vested. And then, like I said, I think we're approaching the end of the arc now, and now that we're close to the end, it feels like such a slog and so contrived, and I don't want to watch Vegeta lose, guys. I don't know how I'm going to handle it.
It's happened too many times at this point.
Yeah, it hurts.
Yeah, but I've never spent 3 goddamn months of my life, that's a quarter of a fucking calendar year, telling myself, wow, Vegeta's about to get that W. This is great.
Oh, they'll
okay?
actually change
That's
up their
where I'm at right
storytelling
now.
method. This will be unique and different. A turning point for the series. JK. LOL.
Yeah, that wouldn't be very good for selling toys.
Yeah, no.
Anyway, by the time this episode goes up, I imagine it will be either maybe the 19th or the 20th. I'm not really sure, but it'll be at or around the same time all those douchebags on Twitter start to ruin the next chapter for you with like the plot leaks or scans or whatever that I bitched about for 25 minutes before. It's probably lining up to be right around that time. So the 20th is when the new chapter will drop, chapter 61. We will see what happens when Vegeta takes over for Goku. The way he shows up and saves Goku is very dramatic in chapter 60. Chapter 60, again, is a very action-heavy chapter. The only things we learned is that Vegeta learned instant transmission to do it one time to get to Earth, and then he makes the conscious declaration, like he makes it a point to say to everybody, I just did that once and I'm never going to do it again, so fuck you. And it's very weird, but I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens in chapter 61. I imagine Vegeta's going to hold off enough time for Goku to get miraculously saved somehow, and then he'll pop in with a Zenkai boost, an unearned power boost, and go perfected Ultra Instinct, and maybe we'll have a cartoon when it's all done.
Yeah.
I don't know. Paul, Leonard, Katie, I want to thank you guys for letting me talk at you about Dragon Ball today. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, man. Anytime. You got a great
Yeah, no
podcasting
problem.
voice. I like hearing you talk at me about Dragon Ball. It's good.
I'll talk at you all day, baby. Make sure you guys go listen to part 1 of our conversation at the NPC Pods feed. How can guys find you, whether it be, how do people find you? Go
So
for
you
it.
can go to silvertongueaudio.org. You can find our podcasts there. We're kind of on a hiatus, but we're coming out of it pretty soon here. You can find the NPC Pod. You can find the NPC Adventures, which is a tabletop. I also got 2 other guys doing 2 other podcasts. The Midnight in the Bay, which is a stand-up comedian here in the Bay Area, talking about his life as a dad. And then Dazed and Disturbed is a podcast about unsolved murders around the world and weed culture around the world. He just gets a bunch of guys together and talks about crazy, scary shit.
Very cool, man. It sounds like you and me are living the same kind of life, West Coast, East Coast stuff.
It does sound like that. I didn't know you had more than one podcast. Good to know, though.
Yeah, I mean, I do a few like with myself where I talk and produce and stuff, but I mainly just edit and produce for like businesses and
Oh,
stuff like
nice.
that. And we just launched our first journalism podcast
Hey.
a couple weeks back.
About time.
Yeah.
It's a good time to start a journalism podcast.
It's a fuck show. Well, here's the thing: is it's called the Migrant Cafe. You guys can go check it out. I'm doing it with a couple of friends of mine. It's my buddy Kevin, who is a immigrant rights reporter with like a few different newspapers around the country throughout his
Nice.
career, and then this woman Delia Rodriguez Mesjuan, who is a immigrant rights advocate and has run different charities to help people who want to immigrate to America navigate the immigration legal process.
That's awesome.
So they're very familiar with that world and the stories that impact them. So we put together this whole plan. Like we just feel it's an underserved sort of niche, I guess. And, you know, we put together this plan and we plan to launch for June 1st.
Okay.
And leading up to recording is, you know, the George Floyd stuff. So
Right.
each of the last 3 weeks has at least, you know, we shot for 30 to 40 minutes. It was like the hopeful time frame, you know, format. At least 10 to 15 minutes each week has just gone to George Floyd stuff because it's been such a goddamn topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a long way for me to give you a plug on the Migrant Cafe. Make sure you guys go check it out on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify. Rate that shit because it helps us out. And I appreciate that stuff. That didn't work out as well as I thought it would in terms of a rhyme. Paul, Leonard, Katie, thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to me ramble about Dragon Ball. I hope to have you guys back again soon.
Yeah, hope so. This is
Thank
fun.
you.
It
It was a lot of fun.
Yes.
Super dope! NPC Pod was just on my show.